first brain structure we will be looking at is the reptilian brain. It's located deep inside the skull. It's the home of our individual survival instincts and is responsible to deal with life-threatening situations. Now, to be technically correct, it works closely together with the limbic amygdala, which is located in the next brain structure and covered in the next lecture. The term reptilian brain refers to the erroneous belief that we inherited this part of the brain from our reptilian ancestors. Now, this is incorrect, however, as amphibians and fish also share this part of the brain. We most probably have to go back to our common evolutionary ancestor of all vertebrates. The other thing with the reptilian denomination is that this part of the brain's only concern is its own individual survival. Now I know it's unfortunate, as just to name one, some crocodiles take care of their offspring by letting them hide in their mouth. Now for all these reasons, this part of the brain is sometimes also referred to as the primitive brain. Anyway, just to be clear, we do not have an actual reptilian brain in our head. It's an image being used here. Good. So the reptilian brain has three and only three ways of responding to a threat. You're probably already familiar with the famous fight or flight response. Actually, there is one more: flight, fight or freeze. So back in the Stone Age, when a caveman would notice his being followed by a pack of hungry wolves, three things would happen. Now the first strategy, our caveman would try to run. Now the thing with wolves is that they're pretty fast. Our legs may be longer, but they got 4 of them, so outrunning them is pretty much impossible. Second option for our caveman is to fight them off. If the danger is not too strong, this could work actually. Sometimes it's enough to intimidate by making ourselves look bigger, making much noise, throwing stuff around. Unfortunately, we're in the Stone Age, so much more than sticks and stones won't be available. And the wolves? Well, there are a lot of them. They got claws and sharp teeth and strong jaws. The odds are definitely not looking good. Last but not least, our caveman can freeze. This means he makes himself as small as possible so the threat won't see him or won't find him interesting enough as lunch. The best survival option for our caveman, though, would have been to find a big tree and climb up there, hoping the wolves would tire and eventually walk away. So here we are, 30,000 years later, and there aren't that many packs of wolves, or any other hungry predators for that matter, running around in our big cities, or even in the countryside. So great, no more need for the reptilian brain. Well, not quite. In our modern lives, the reptilian brain still gets activated in situations of life or death, even if these are quite few. If you're crossing the street and a car comes right at you, you will have the same 3 instinctive reactions as our caveman. The first reaction is to jump away or flight. In the second phase, you might consider stopping the car with both your hands like Superman does. However, that might not work. The third reaction is to freeze, like a rabbit caught in a spotlight at night. You'll just stop moving altogether. If you're lucky, the car might miss you. But our reptilian brain also gets activated when our life is not in danger. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what today we call stress. Stress is a defense mechanism to a perceived danger. Now, I didn't say danger, I said perceived danger, because humans are probably the only species capable of worrying for something that might never happen. Anyway, so when we feel stressed, we actually still use those same 3 strategies as our friend the caveman. The fleeing becomes anxiety. Ever felt nervous before a test or when you had to give a presentation? That is the flee stress. The fighting becomes aggressivity. Ever came home after a nerve-wracking day at the office and you started shouting at the kids or your partner over something trivial? That is the fight stress in action. Finally, the free stress becomes helplessness. Ever faced this daunting task where you didn't even know where to begin? Only thinking about it made you feel depressed. Well, that is the free stress. So, to summarize the reptilian brain, this brain structure is responsible for our individual survival instincts. When activated, we feel stress, which can take 3 forms: flight, fight or freeze, or translated in our modern world, anxiety, aggressivity or helplessness. The second brain structure of interest to us is the paleolimbic brain. It's the home of some of our unconscious scripts inherited from our education, which regulate our life. There where the reptilian brain was aimed at the survival of the individual, the Paleolimbic brain is responsible for the survival of the group. Now, scientists used to believe that in evolutionary terms it developed with the emergence of the first mammals who decided to live in herds. That is not correct, however, as it is also found with other vertebrates. Besides the question of its origins, its purpose is clear. Living together maximized the chances of survival of a group, however, social life needed to be regulated. In order to do so, the Paleolimbic brain defines the position of the individual towards the group. This translates into two key concepts that are regulated here: our self-confidence and our trust in others. So self-confidence and trust. We put them on two axes. In the middle we will find assertiveness. Here an individual finds balance. He or she doesn't have too much self-confidence or trust, neither does he or she lacks it. Now wait a minute. Too much self-confidence? How can someone have too much confidence? Well, it's all a matter of words or semantics, if you will. With the neurocognitive and behavioral approach, we defined a tipping point where confidence in oneself turns into "I am entitled to more than others." This belief that we are better for whatever reason, it may be because we have more money, better looks, a bigger car, whatever. That belief is for us too much self-confidence. Once we agree on the words that we speak about the same concepts, we can work with them. So in the middle we have assertiveness. Here people can say yes to things they want and refuse things they don't want. Too much self-confidence is what we call dominance. Now, dominance is not, as one may think, about yelling and overpowering the other. In its mild form, it's all about manipulation and seduction. The dominant person can be very charming and nice. The thing is, it's not genuine. They do so to obtain favors, to get what they want. For the dominant person, others are evaluated in terms of utility. They will use them to obtain their goal, whatever that may be. In its most extreme form, excessive self-confidence leads to a narcissistic personality disorder. A lack of self-confidence we call submissiveness. Submissiveness is a real burden. Whenever something turns out well, they feel they were lucky. If something goes wrong, the submissive person will feel it's their fault. If you compare that to a dominant person, every success they feel is their doing, and failure is always due to others. The dominant person is totally incapable of admitting mistakes or taking responsibility, as in their opinion they are so superior to everyone else. In its most extreme form, submissiveness will lead to melancholic depression. On the other axis, the one of trust in others, we will call someone who is lacking trust to be marginal. You probably heard about conspiracy theories. Did you know that 4% of the population of the United States actually believes that shape-shifting reptilian people control our world by taking on human form and control our governments? This is a good example of what marginality looks like. In its extreme form, it turns into paranoia. Too much trust in others we will call axiality. Have you ever received a mail from people claiming to need your help to free large sums of money, of which you would receive your share, of course? Now, over the years, this one has known many versions, from a bank to the lottery and even political dissidents. I once received a mail supposedly from the daughter of Colonel Gaddafi, the ex-dictator of Libya. These, of course, are scams. An assertive person wonders who would ever fall for that. Well, actually, actual people do. They have an excessive trust in others, which leads to gullibility. The people sending out those mails know that. Their mail isn't intended for assertive people. They prey on the actuals among us. In its most extreme form, axiality becomes mystical delirium. The Paleolimbic is quite an archaic structure of the brain. It can learn and evolve, however, it does so very slowly. Any person with a lack of self-confidence could testify. It's not something you can solve over the weekend. Any person claiming to be able to grow your self-esteem in a record time is a fraud. It is a physical impossibility. The Paleolimbic brain cannot evolve that fast. It has never been observed until now. The only exception to this rule are traumatizing events like mugging or, heaven forbid, rape, which can shatter your self-confidence in seconds. However, a quick shift is always downwards, never upwards. We can recognize the reptilian brain is active because people react in three stress modes. When the Paleolimbic brain is active, we will see people behaving in a very territorial way. It's all about power games. Above all, it's the dominant behavior that is the most problematic. It's actually quite easy to spot. It goes from peacock or macho behavior over bullying to all types of harassment. As said before, these people never question their own behavior and thus never learn. There is good news though. Just as in the animal kingdom, it is rare to find alpha males fighting to death over a female or a herd. They will try to impress and intimidate. Sometimes they will actually fight. However, fights usually don't last long. It's more probing and trying, checking out the strength of the other. Once it's established the other one is stronger, they will disengage. Why? Well, getting wounded is very dangerous. Even a small wound can get infected. Predators and prey alike need to be able to run as fast as they can, so they need to minimize dangerous situations. The Paleolimbic brain works with the same logic. It tries to impress and intimidate. However, it is actually quite a coward. From the moment it feels firm resistance, it will try once, twice, now maybe 3 times, then it will disengage. This is great news for people having to deal with a dominant person in their surroundings, particularly when dominance is combined with marginality. Why, you ask? Well, this combination leads easily to jealousy, which can potentially ruin a happy relationship. So to summarize the Paleolimbic brain, this brain structure is responsible for the survival of the group and works around 2 axes, self-confidence and trust. When activated, the Paleolimbic makes us quite territorial. We can become dominant, submissive, marginal, or actual. Our third brain structure is the Neolimbic brain. I'm a huge fan of the Neolimbic brain. It's a fascinating place, home to our deepest motivations and raw emotions. This is where our memory resides. Everything we experience in our lives will be recorded here, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's here where we are most of the time. I mean, this is the part of the brain that is usually running the show. It runs like an autopilot. It recognizes situations where we've already been through and immediately comes up with a set of standard operational procedures to deal with the situation at hand. Here lies everything we've ever learned. It deals with everything, from walking and talking, over driving and using a computer, to how to behave in public and all kinds of social codes you can imagine. It's highly efficient, as it will use the minimum necessary attention span to carry out tasks, which frees up attention to do other things at the same time. For example, let's say driving and having a conversation with the person next to you. Actually, any routine occupation that lets you wander off with your mind. Here you will find all the contradictions and paradoxes of our complex personalities. We are wonderful beings, capable of so much, yet limiting ourselves all the time. Basically, we can distinguish 3 layers of motivation. The first layer is fixed, partly formed through our genes and partly from our environment. Once we're only 3 months old, it will remain the same for the rest of our lives. These motivations give us energy and joy. They are also called intrinsic motivations. With the NBA, we have identified different types of motivation which lead to 8 different personality types. Now, every one of us has between 2 and 4 of these personalities. Sometimes they are very strong and present, sometimes, however, they get covered up and almost disappear underneath the other layers. The second layer isn't fixed. It will continuously evolve and has no age limit to do so. Here we will find our likes and dislikes. They are also called extrinsic motivations. Extrinsic motivations aren't stable nor sustainable. They cost us energy and will fade if they don't meet success. Here we will find everything that our environment has given us, from our parents, brothers and sisters, over our teachers and friends, to movies, music, video games. Basically, this second layer is like a blueprint of the cultural influences we've been subject to. They push us to do what others expect from us, what is socially acceptable. Here lie also all our irritations, intolerances and prejudices. The difference between the intrinsic and extrinsic motivations is basically the one with that little kid who has to clean his room. In the first scenario, he'll do that and will actually enjoy the cleaning itself. Yes, those kids do exist. In the second scenario, he will be cleaning because mummy told him to, or because daddy promised something sweet. Will that same kid do his homework because he likes it, or because otherwise he might get punished? And years later, will he go to law school because his dad is a lawyer, or will he pursue his dream of working with, let's say, animals? And when the time comes to find a job, will he choose the one with a fat paycheck, or the one where he loves the content? An important thing to know is that the first layer will motivate you regardless if you're great at doing what you do. Extrinsic motivations, on the contrary, don't last. The motivation from a raise, if it's substantial enough, will last 3 to 6 months maximum. As a business owner, if you have to give your people a raise every 6 months, you'll be out of business in no time. The choice between a fat paycheck and a career you love is a no-brainer from a motivational point of view. Still, a lot of people would go for the fat paycheck. This society we live in pushes us to compete and win all the time. We're primed, we're biased, we're programmed to live a life that others intended for us. The real question, though, is, underneath all that, what do you want? You, the real you, the 3 months old you, before everything else started to find a way into your limbic system. Why we should care? Happiness, fulfillment, joy. That's why. Otherwise, we'll just end up angry, frustrated and bitter, faking to have a perfect life and being miserable inside. Okay, so much for intrinsic and extrinsic motivations. There is a third layer though, a fascinating one. I'm talking about obsessions. I can hear you think, oh, obsessions, oh, I don't have those. That's nothing like me. Well, newsflash. I'm sorry to tell you, we all have them, not one, but actually many. Don't believe me? Fine, be that way. Remember the first time you fell in love? Remember the feeling. Remember how you just couldn't get enough of the other person. You wanted to be together all the time, calling and texting each other all the time, seeing the other person's face everywhere. Well, that, my friend, is what we call an obsession. And the fact that you think it doesn't apply to you is because you're not aware of them. An obsession is a passion that has gone over its tipping point. Behind it lies a compensation mechanism for a void in our life. When displaying obsessive behavior, we're thinking all the time about something or someone. Everything we do related to our obsession is just too much. We can't get enough of it, and we'll never be satisfied. It's the root of addictions. It's more than the usual suspects of drugs and alcohol. Think about workaholism, shopaholism, sex addiction, betting, stalking, fanatism and extremism of all kinds. When they're not managed, obsessions can potentially ruin our lives and that of others. But most of all, even when they are mild, due to their compulsive nature, they just enchain us into a life of servitude, ever chasing that one thing that we can't get enough of. When obsessed, we're just not free. So to summarize, the neolimbic brain, this is our standby mode in which we operate most of the time. It is also the home of our memories. Everything we've been through remains here, and most of all, the neolimbic brain is the heart of our motivations, of which we distinguish 3 layers: our intrinsic motivations, our extrinsic motivations, and our obsessions. Last but far from least comes the prefrontal brain. This one is a marvel of evolution. It makes us, humans, unique, as no other living being has this brain structure the way we have it. Because, let's face it, everything we've seen so far, all 3 brain structures, are widespread in the animal kingdom. The reptilian and paleolimbic mode are so basic that using them puts us in a state where we have no connection anymore with our logical thinking abilities. On the other hand, it is true that in the neolimbic lies the essence of who we are as individuals, with our memories and motivations. Still, that doesn't make us human. Anyone who has a dog or a cat at home will be able to testify that those animals have their own character traits, likes, dislikes, and motivations. So it is the prefrontal brain that makes us human. Not so much the fact of having one, as some of the more evolved mammals actually also have a prefrontal brain. I'm thinking here, for example, dolphins, dogs, elephants, and the other great apes. The size of their prefrontal brain is actually the normal size. Ours is just ridiculously huge. It's almost as if it was pimped. And it is this oversized prefrontal brain that makes us truly human. How? Well, remember our caveman from the reptilian brain, the one who was being hunted down by a pack of wolves. Yes, him. Well, if you compare him with a cave bear, there is one thing that distinguishes both. Even though generations of cave bears lived for thousands of years in caves, never has a single one of them thought about decorating the place. I mean, putting a little paint on the walls, drawing some wild animals he's going to hunt. Okay, sure, bears can't paint. So what about the claws? Why haven't they used it to carve some nice patterns, or maybe just a signature type at the entrance to state the cave was theirs? Why? Prefrontal brain size. That's why. This prefrontal brain works like some kind of supercomputer on a totally unconscious level, drawing conclusions from all of the different sensorial inputs it gets, creating innovative combinations to come up with new ways to deal with the situation at hand. This way, the prefrontal mode is a champion of adaptation and creativity, especially suited for unknown and complex situations. As we saw before, the neolimbic brain works as some kind of autopilot, dealing with the world as we know it. It is the home of all our little habits and routines, which make us function very efficiently in our daily lives. So the prefrontal brain is the one dealing with new and complex situations. Let me correct that. The prefrontal brain should be the one dealing with new and complex situations, because no, it's not always the case. Let me give you a couple of examples of automatic mode when adaptive mode would have made a huge difference. 12 publishing firms turned down J.K. Rowling's first Harry Potter book. Decca Records turned down the Beatles in 1962. The Titanic. I think there's a world market for maybe 5 computers, said the IBM chairman in 1943. Who the hell wants to hear actors talk? That came from Warner Brothers in 1927. And Atari and HP turning down Steve Jobs' idea of a personal computer. Now, I could go on like this for hours. Whenever someone thought of something new, there has always been others unable to see further than what currently is, failing to see what could be. They stayed stuck in their limbic mode when what they should have done is switch to their prefrontal brain. Now the point I'm trying to make is that when we use our limbic brain, we're not able to see further than what we already know, our existing experiences, hence the turning down of big opportunities. When we have to make decisions on new things, we should switch to our prefrontal brain. This one enables us to adapt to change and deal with complex decision making. It doesn't ensure we'll take the right decision, nor does it mean we'll agree with any change just for the sake of adaptation. No. It only means we'll use all our knowledge and creativity to be able to see a possible future and then make a decision, yes or no. This in contrast to the limbic brain, where we'll just reject the idea because it has never worked before. So the reaction of Warner Brothers, who wants to hear actors talk, it's a very good example of this. At this point in time, in 1927, all movies were mute. His limbic brain couldn't imagine anything else. His prefrontal brain would have been able to, and maybe he still would have decided not to go for it. Maybe because of financial reasons, high investments, but not because he couldn't imagine people not wanting to hear people talk. Idem ditto with the IBM chairman stating there was a world market of maybe 5 computers. His limbic brain wasn't able to project a world with computers no larger than a book and much more capacity than at that time. Of course, not all change is good, neither is all resistance bad. Using our prefrontal brain when we need to helps us taking into account all the available information and taking the best possible decision based on that. Our prefrontal brain is also home to our creativity, intuition, spirituality, but also our adaptability. An indicator that our prefrontal brain is active is our emotions. We feel calm, serenity, in full control. We are on top of our game. This is the true land of possibility, right there behind our forehead, our prefrontal cortex, the marvel of evolution. So to summarize the prefrontal brain, this is the part of our brain which should switch on whenever we face a complex situation or we need to adapt to new circumstances. Unfortunately, often we don't, which leads to resistance to change and bad decision making. So now that we went through the different brain structures and their function, let me present to you a typology for managers based on their dominant brain structure. Of course, we don't have the same brain structure switched on 24/7. Still, it's fair to say that there are patterns emerging in our behavior, indicating we're mostly active in one of them. So we have 4 brain structures: the reptilian, the paleolimbic, the neolimbic, and the prefrontal brain. Accordingly, we could distinguish 4 types of leaders: reptilian leader, paleolimbic leader, neolimbic leader, and prefrontal leader. Now let's have a look at each one of them and see what their characteristics are. So we start with the reptilian leader. The reptilian leader is dominated by stress. He's not proactive, he's reactive. He's in survival mode, running from one emergency to another, barely keeping his head above water. He's more a firefighter than anything else. We could distinguish 3 types of reptilian leaders with a fight, flight and freeze response. Fighting reptilian leaders would be the aggressive type. Fleeing reptilian leaders would be all over the place. Freezing reptilian leaders, well, they wouldn't be much of a leader, terrified to take action, not taking any decisions. With the paleolimbic leader, it's another game that is being played. Here we're talking manipulative, deceitful power games. Paleolimbic leaders are territorial. They'll let you know when you're on their turf. We could distinguish 4 types of paleolimbic leaders. Dominant paleolimbic leaders are probably the worst. They think they are God's gift to the organization and feel entitled to all kinds of privileges. There where the fighting reptilian leader reacts to a stressful situation with aggression, here the dominant paleolimbic leader will initiate the aggression. He's the aggressor. He rules by fear and secretly enjoys it. In his eyes, everyone around him is incompetent or plain stupid. They are not afraid to yell, publicly humiliate others, or worse, intimidate, bully, or sexually harass their team. Marginal paleolimbic leaders are a real pain because basically they're paranoid. They don't trust anybody. They will micromanage their teams, not because they think they're better, like the dominant paleolimbic leader. No, it's more because, well, they got trust issues. The actual paleolimbic leader are something special. They want to be their team's best friend and everyone has to get along with everyone. At first sight this might seem like something great, but wait until one morning they start to discuss their sex life with you or invite you to a naked sauna together. Actual paleolimbic leaders have a problem with boundaries. They don't realize they're getting too close, too invasive. They think they know what others want, what others need, and they'll provide it without being asked. It can become quite creepy at times. The submissive paleolimbic leader is something else, really. This leader is all about exchanging favors to get his team to do things. He's very involved and feels personally responsible for everything that goes wrong. He has a really hard time imposing his will and needs to bargain his way out. A lot of times he ends up doing work his team should be doing, not because he doesn't trust them as with the marginal paleolimbic leader, but because he lacks the skills to rally his team or impose his views. What we often see is a combination of dominant submissive leaders. These leaders are very dominant with their own team, but extremely submissive and servile with their own boss. One moment they crawl at the feet of their superior, next they are barking at their own troops. These leaders are like chess players, planning several moves ahead. They develop schemes, conspiracies, manipulating, trying to win favors, so they can slowly but surely raise on the hierarchical ladder. Their only interest is their own, even if that means scratching someone else's back. But don't be fooled, they only do that so you would be in their debt. Next is the neolimbic leader. The neolimbic, remember, is a siege of our emotions, of our personalities. Here we're entering the realm of authentic leadership. With neolimbic leaders, what you see is what you get. Their own personality will guide their decisions and style, and we can distinguish 8 of them. The neolimbic philosophical leader. Key words here are optimism, curiosity, consensual. These leaders enjoy the simple life. They are flexible and can easily adapt to new challenges. They are usually stress-free, do things at their own pace. They like to involve their team and discuss items with them. They do well in stressful environments, where their calming presence has a positive influence on the team. The Neolimbic innovative leader. With the innovative leader, obviously the focus is on innovation, abstraction, theories. They enjoy complexity, interdisciplinarity, having to develop new models. They are always a step ahead, already thinking about the next big breakthrough when you're still in awe with the current one. But they're not only active in the realm of models and theory. With their teams, they are very respectful leaders. They take responsibility and empower the people around them as well. They do great in research and development departments, or any department with its share of conceptualization. When leading a company, they might single-handedly revolutionize a whole industry, thanks to their focus on innovation. Profit margins might not be the best, with the focus on R&D, but they will for sure leave a legacy. The Neolimbic animated leader. With the animated leader, you're in for a ride. These leaders thrive on change and strong sensations. They are very creative and have plenty of new ideas. The result of that is an ever-changing environment, a multitude of projects, often very diverse. People around them usually have a hard time keeping up with their pace. We're talking high energy, work hard, play hard environment. Even though it's exhausting for others, they are a real inspiration for their team, and their playfulness will bring a positive vibe to all projects. The Neolimbic administrative leader. Here, playtime is over. The Neolimbic administrative leader is about administration and safety. We're talking financial control, planning, tools, Excel sheets, reporting, and so on. These leaders are at their best in a number environment. They get a thrill out of procedures. Put them in a finance, insurance, or accounting environment, and they will love you for it. They are also great when it comes to safety and prevention. The Neolimbic strategic leader. Now forget the numbers, here comes a champion of people management. Neolimbic strategic leaders are both loyal to their organization and their team. They will listen to their team. They're looking for harmony, balance, which means they will mediate and actively solve problems if they arise. Great at organizing and coordinating, they will entrust their team, delegate tasks, empower their people, give training where necessary in order to unlock hidden potential. They will stand with their team, support them, make them grow and find the best in each and every single one of them. The Neolimbic competitive leader. With a competitive leader, you can forget the harmony. Here we're talking dogfight. If you didn't have to fight over something, that thing basically isn't worth having. So this leader will push their team in the ropes, demand the utmost and more, make them sweat, cry and bleed. A victory has to be earned, conquered. It's the cult of the hero that dominates everything, and of course the leader himself is the ultimate example to be followed. He's not afraid of getting his hands dirty. It's do as I do. He will be in the line of fire, making sure his leadership is never questioned, because he's the best. The Neolimbic participative leader. Welcome to leadership with a human face. The Neolimbic participative leader is all about knowing its team, sharing and caring. This leader will do whatever it takes for its team. Support, training, encouragement. He will be the one cheering the successes of its team and the shoulder to cry on in hard times. It's a leadership of kindness, where everyone is important. They thrive in an environment on a human scale. The Neolimbic supportive leader. The Neolimbic supportive leader is the portrait of the selfless leader. His sole purpose is to serve others. His team is more important than himself. He's the ultimate altruist, demanding for himself and tolerant toward others. Discreet, he will operate below the surface, helping others shine and always avoiding the spotlights for himself. Now last but not least is the prefrontal leader. The prefrontal leader is characterized by calm, serenity. He's curious by nature and will recognize opportunities when they present themselves. He'll be able to adapt to new challenges and understand the subtleties of complex situations. He will favor reflection over rushed decisions. He will listen to his team, but always be able to follow his own personal opinion, without yielding to peer pressure. Their team will see them as wise or even enlightened, an example to follow. It's important to understand we're not active in one brain structure only. The dominant one is the neolimbic mode, and within that neolimbic mode we are a combination of several personality types. I gave you 8, but the truth is, we are a combination of them, with 2 to 4 dominant ones. Now, depending on the situation, we can switch to the paleolimbic, reptilian or prefrontal mode. But sooner or later we'll always switch back to our standby mode, which is the neolimbic. Whenever the reptilian or paleolimbic is becoming too dominant, it's a recipe for failure. Expect burnouts, people resigning, and probably even harassment lawsuits. The prefrontal leadership is needed in time of trouble, in times when adaptation and change are needed. So which type of leader are you? Care to share? Now this is one of my all-time favorite topics, leadership versus dominance. We've seen how the paleolimbic is responsible for regulating the social position within groups. This has led to some individuals receiving privileges over others on topics as food and reproductive partners. Now look at these magnificent animals. What a formidable leaders they are. Well, not quite actually. When we take a closer look at the animal kingdom, we see how these power relations of dominance and submissiveness are not synonym of leadership. With elephants, the herd is led by an older female, which guides the group from one waterhole to another. She's the living memory of the group, and the others trust and respect her. The males live a solitary life and will join the group for reproduction only. The same is true with deers. One older female leads the herd from one green pasture to another. The males, again, are solitary beings who will only temporarily claim a herd for reproductive purposes during the rutting season, after which they disappear again. Now what about lions? They live a family life with a dominant male, so you would expect the male to be the one in charge, right? No, wrong again. Even though it is true the dominant male will stay with the pride at all times, until he gets evicted by another, that is, he is by no means the leader of the pride. Hunting is done by the females, as the weight of the males make them too slow to be very efficient. It is a mature, experienced female who leads the hunting, guiding the younger animals towards success. If by misfortune the leading female gets hurt, it may have dramatic consequences on the pride. Another female will have to quickly rise to the occasion. Failing to do so could mean starvation for all members of the pride. And this huge responsibility is not, I repeat, not given to the dominant male, even though he gets to eat first after a kill. So what about humans? Isn't it mind-blowing that animals are wise enough to make the decision not to trust the dominant ones and prefer experienced, respected leaders, and we, humans, fail to do so? Think about it. From an early age, some children just use others to get what they want, being it through bossing around or seducing others, children and adults alike. They often behave like small tyrants who can become quite aggressive when they don't get what they want. We can observe that same behavior in adults, sometimes very subtle and other times just flagrant. This paleolimbic behavior, unfortunately, gets often rewarded, as we tend to avoid conflict and confrontation, thus we let them have their way. This is exactly why authoritarian, dominant, aggressive, paleolimbic managers end up in key positions in organizations. As they move up in hierarchy, they ruthlessly play the game of internal politics to discredit potential contenders, and they usually get away with it. Their objective is not to improve the company as a whole, but to get personal privileges through social status, power and higher income. They behave not differently than the male lion who comes for his share after a kill. They are only interested in their own position, and they will defend their territory as if their life depended on it. However, this is not leadership. This is dominance. You won't find a deer nor elephant, dolphin, lion pride, wolf, buffalo, wildebeest, zebra or giraffe to follow a dominant male. These animals follow other individuals based on their neolimbic traits and skills. They trust them because they have shown they are capable and do care about the group. Not because they are afraid they will get sacked or won't get their promotion, or because they are being forced in one way or another. Leadership is a very neolimbic activity. It's primarily linked to the strategist personality, in combination with the innovator for vision, the competitor for fighting spirit, or the administrator for organization. There are higher goals involved, and its purpose is to elevate the others. Dominance is a pure paleolimbic trait where the other's only purpose is to serve the dominant's interests. Others get pushed down so the dominant one can rise. Now look at the world we live in. Where do you see leadership and where do you see dominance? Look around you. How would you describe your boss? Or even better, look at yourself. Can you identify moments where you use dominance in order to get what you want? Don't forget, dominance is also about manipulation and seduction. I guess whenever we ask someone to do something, the true question should be, who will benefit the most from this? Depending on the answer, you will know if you're facing leadership or dominance.